Megyn Kelly faces outrage for distinguishing teen abuse from child abuse in a Jeffrey Epstein discussion. Hey everyone, Johnny here, Don't Speak News. Well, this is news that is being spoken about, but not nearly enough, in my opinion. Megyn Kelly, of course, is a mark of the beast injected, um, disgusting, vile human being, or excuse for a human being. But anyway, let's just get into what she talked about here and why it's so disgusting. So she's facing widespread criticism after remarks she made on her Sirius XM show, called The Megyn Kelly Show, about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. During the November 12th episode, Kelly appeared to distinguish between teen abuse and child abuse, prompting outrage from viewers and advocates. Kelly and guest this Bataya Ungar Sargon discussed recently released emails from the House Oversight Committee in which Epstein mentioned former President Trump. And in fact, look at this. This was sent to me by a subscriber on a search that he did. Did Donald Trump spend Thanksgiving with Epstein? Epstein mentions Trump in emails about Thanksgiving plans 2017, guys. This wasn't back in the 2000s and all that, as Trump would like you to believe. He wants you to believe that he disassociated himself with Epstein years ago. And that creep Epstein, as he's called him. But as you can see, that's not the case at all, as these emails keep coming out and dumping more information. So anyway, acknowledging Epstein's crimes, Kelly said Epstein did like them young, and there were several young women who he did this to who were minors, who were underage. Several? Dozens upon dozens. Anyway, there's just no question about that. She also emphasized that Trump was not involved. Really? Give me a break. All the emails say that he was. So according to Yahoo, Kelly cited an unnamed source very, very close to this case who allegedly told her that Epstein was not a pedophile. How is that even close to being true? The way these scumbags like Megyn Kelly try to keep spinning this is just unbelievable to me. But according to Kelly, the source claimed Epstein was into the barely legal type, like he liked 15-year-olds. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this, but he wasn't like into 8-year-olds, she says. Like that makes it okay somehow. Unreal. She added, we have yet to see anybody come forward and say I was under 10, I was under 14 when I first came within his purview. You can say that's a distinction without a difference. She says, I think there is a difference. There's a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old, you know. Kelly admitted that discussing Epstein made her skin crawl and called the situation disgusting. Yeah, well, you're probably into the same stuff that he was. Because most of you that are on the mainstream spotlight, you're into all that crap. Nancy Grace used to harass her, the gal from CNN used to harass her assistant about going to these orgies and parties that she used to go to. And she was encouraging her assistant to go with her. But she didn't. But I'm just saying, these people are all scumbags. They're all horrible people. And trying to cover for Trump and Epstein? Are you kidding me? Next thing you know, she'll be saying that Ghislaine Maxwell is not so bad and she needs to be free. I wouldn't doubt it. They'll try and spin that one next because that's probably what's coming next. And they're all they're all in on it. They're all in on it. And yet they come up with this digital ID that they say is here to protect kids. When nothing could be further from the truth. Just look at the Franklin cover-ups. If you don't have this book, and if you haven't read this book, you should. But of course, you have to pray for spiritual strength in order to do it because it is quite shocking to read. But it's all about child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska and around the country. All around America. And it started out when the credit unions went down. Nebraska Franklin Federal Credit Union in this case. It was raided by federal agencies in November 1988. And it sent shockwaves all the way to Washington, D.C., as $40 million was missing. But what looked like a financial swindle soon exploded into a hideous tale of drugs, Iran-Contra money laundering, a nationwide child abuse ring, and ritual murder. 19 months later, the Legislative Committee's chief investigator died. Imagine that. Suddenly and violently. Like more than a dozen other people linked to the Franklin case. Author John DeCamp knows the Franklin scandal from the inside. In 1990, his DeCamp memo was first publicly named the alleged high-ranking abusers, including George Bush, the president at the time. Today, he is attorney for two of the abuse victims, using documentation never before made public. DeCamp lays bare not only the crimes, but the cover-up. A textbook case of how dangerous the corruption of institutions of government and the press can be. In its sweep and what it pretends for the nation, the Franklin cover-up followed the ugly precedent of the Warren Commission. And so, like I said, if you haven't read this book, you should, because it really exposes how ugly the underbelly of all this is, and how ugly people like this truly are. Man, I can't even stand to look at her face anymore after this, reading this. I mean, it was hard to before, and now it's even harder after reading that article. And now let's talk about this Texas and California mandating digital ID. In Texas, you're supposed to be so free, right? Give me a break. So Texas and California mandate digital ID to access all apps by 2026, as Apple introduces digital ID to travel inside the United States. Can I see your papers, please? But in this case, your digital papers. And I was just thinking about this again the other day, and I've talked about this before, but it's been a while. Apple has been at the forefront of all of this digital ID stuff with their iPhones. They slowly worked it all in, right? I can't remember which iPhone it was when it began where you had to start using fingerprints, but that was the start of all this, mandating fingerprints in order to use their devices, and now facial recognition. I think that's been in place since the iPhone 8, and what are we up to now? 16, 17? I don't remember. They just keep releasing a new one every year or two, whether people want one or not, because they have to. But anyway, it says here, with the launch of digital ID, we're excited to expand the ways users can store and present their identity, all with the security and privacy built into iPhone and Apple Watch. Oh, isn't that wonderful? They've never been hacked before, right? Give me a break. So while the digital ID rollout overseas has grabbed attention online, the United States is quietly rolling out digital ID verification that is set to take place next year. Yeah, within a month and a half, thanks to legislation passed by California and Texas, the two biggest populated states in the nation. In October, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill that forces device makers such as Apple, Microsoft, and Google to require users to verify their age to access certain content online. The framework established by the state, according to Politico, could become a national template for shielding kids from potentially inappropriate or harmful content without drawing big tech's ire. In a blog post on Newsom's website, the governor stated this: emerging technology like chatbots and social media can inspire, educate, and connect. But without real guardrails, technology can also exploit, mislead, and endanger our kids. Yeah, heaven forbid parents would actually take any flipping responsibility today. Instead, they're going to let government do it all, just like they have through the school system. Anyway, we've seen some truly horrific and tragic examples of young people harmed by unregulated tech. So they created the problem. Here comes their solution. And we won't stand by while companies continue without necessary limits and accountability. He said we can continue to lead in AI and technology, but we must do it responsibly, protecting our children every step of the way. Our children's safety is not for sale. Well, I guess it actually is. You know, I mean, give me a break. Talking about children's safety, while at the same time knowing that these people are the very perpetrators of child sex trafficking and allow it all to happen and go down. The United States is the number one destination for this crap. Same thing for all pornography. We want to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. That's the United States. All of it, not just Texas, California, and all of it. And these sickos are everywhere. Anyway, the bill contains these following provisions: new safeguards on AI chatbots by establishing requirements that companion chatbot platforms create protocols to identify and address users' suicidal ideations or expressions of self-harm. Platforms must also disclose that interactions are artificially generated, and minors must be provided break reminders and prevented from viewing sexually explicit images generated by the chatbot. Platforms will be required to share protocols for dealing with self-harm and statistics regarding how often they provided users with crisis-centered prevention notifications to the Department of Public Health. Legislation also establishes a prohibition against chatbots representing themselves as healthcare professionals. And it requires age verifications by the operating system and app store providers, social media warning labels, stronger penalties for deepfake pornography, guidance to prevent cyberbullying, and clear accountability for harm caused by AI technology. California has been gearing up for digital ID wallets since 2023. Newsom promised at the time, know this, in just a matter of months, we're finally going to have those digital wallets where you can get your driver's license on a digital wallet. But we're going to do it like no other state has done it. That's only a few that have. But there's issues. Ours, we think, will be next level. We're so excited about what the DMV can look like. I'm sure they are. Meanwhile, Texas passed a similar law, but it's even more restrictive than California's. So go ahead, Texans, and tell me how free you are. Go ahead and tell me again, because it's not true. You're believing a lie. This starting on January 1st, 2026, like I said, 6 weeks away, Texas will force users to provide legal identity to simply download an app. Any app, in fact. Even if it's rated G. From weather to sports to news, a simple calculator or a calendar, everything will be affected. In the text of the bill, the Texas App Store Accountability Act, it states this. When an individual in this state creates an account with an app store, the owner of the app store shall use a commercially reasonable method of verification to identify the user's age. If the owner of the app store determines under Section 121.021 that an individual is a minor who belongs to an age category that's not an adult, the owner shall require that the minor account be affiliated with a parent account belonging to the minor's parent or guardian, blah, blah, blah. And so, essentially, to download anything from Google or Apple, you're going to have this verification done. However, Apple and Google were a bit reluctant to comply, or at least they pretended to be. In a blog post, Apple shared some of its concerns. While we share the goal of strengthening kids' online safety, we are concerned that SB 2420 impacts the privacy of users by requiring the collection of sensitive, personally identifiable information to download any app, even if a user simply wants to check the weather or sports scores. They want to know absolutely everything about you. Google also expressed its displeasure in March in response to an identical bill passed by Utah. Yeah, Utah's got a digital ID coming out too. Did you know that? Go look it up, guys. I can't cover everything. But it's out there. Utah's going to have this too. So this bill requires app stores to share if a user is a kid or a teenager with all app developers, essentially millions of individual companies, without parental consent or rules on how the information is used. This raises real privacy and safety risk, like the potential for bad actors to sell the data or use it for other nefarious purposes, which they're already doing, but this would make it even easier to do. This level of data sharing is not necessary. A weather app doesn't need to know if a user is a kid. By contrast, a social media app does need to make significant decisions about age-appropriate content and features. Now, parents should be keeping their kids off of these phones. They shouldn't be allowed phones or tablets at all, but of course, schools are requiring the tablet use. So once again, they contradict themselves. Well, we don't want kids to use phones and tablets, but we're going to require them for schools. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So Apple's digital ID. Though Apple said it's not a fan of Texas digital ID law, this week the company announced it's allowing users to upload their legal identification onto its devices as proof of ID paired with biometric scans. Yep, like I said, Apple's been at the forefront of all this for a long time. But here's the press release. Apple today announced the launch of digital ID, a new way for users to create an ID in the Apple Wallet using information from the U.S. passport and present it with the security and privacy of an iPhone or an Apple Watch. At launch, digital ID acceptance will roll out first in beta at TSA checkpoints at more than 250 airports in the U.S. for in-person identity verification during domestic travel. Domestic travel. With additional digital ID acceptance use cases to come in the future. And so I'll let you read the rest on your own. I'm not going to go through all of these press releases. The Associated Press also explained how to register your ID with an Apple device. They say, finally, you will need to verify your identity, first by taking a selfie and then by carrying out a series of facial and head movements, such as turning your head or closing your eyes. And so they're saying that the ID is local to the device and only on the device. Like it's going to make it safer somehow. Unreal. Once someone gets access to all this and it gets access to the Apple files, everybody that has an Apple phone and has this stored in it will be compromised. Not that we're not already, but just saying. Here's some videos to show you how it works. In 2022, the Wine Press, which is the site I'm on here, reported how Arizona became the first state to allow digital ID wallets to be stored on iPhones and Apple Wallet. That same year, it was revealed Apple has filed patents for identity document authentication, creating a system that replaced traditional paper documents for digital ones that can be used at stores. Japan also began allowing residents to store their IDs on Apple devices in 2024. So Japan has adopted this as well, and Apple's digital ID adoption comes at a time when the Transportation Security Administration and Department of Homeland Security are retrofitting American airports and border crossings to be totally biometric. They've been working on this for a while. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem told CNN earlier this year, hopefully the future of an airport, where I'm looking to go, is that you can walk in the door with your carry-on suitcase and you walk through a scanner and go right to your flight, and it'll take you 1 minute. Well, since 9/11 was an inside job, we shouldn't have TSA at all. But anyway, it's just become a way of life. And it's amazing to think now that we have a lot of people walking around today that are young adults that were born in, say, 2000, 2001, that don't remember life without the TSA and all the nonsense at the airports. But anyway, so the author commentary, as dangerous as this is not the final iteration of what the ruling elite class wants. Eventually, everything will be merged together as one: banking, medical, social media, messaging, biometrics, and other important documentation. Nevertheless, this is not a good sign of things to come. And that's absolutely true. I've written a number of articles about digital ID, and here in the United States, the Trump administration is quietly working to release one of their own. And if you read and listen to just about any of these major globalist groups, whether it's the UN, the BIS, the WEF, the IMF, BlackRock, etc., digital ID is absolutely imperative to everything they want to roll out and enforce, especially for tokenization and digitalization of all assets, identities, and money. Without that in place, full normalization of tokenization cannot function properly, just as it cannot without the COVID jabs. They needed that, was number one. That's the true digital ID. It's underneath the people who've taken it, it's underneath their skin. And it's not just the mark, it's also telling them everything about them 24/7. Because like Yuval Harari has said, now they've got surveillance under your skin when they did that. And so that was the ultimate key to all of this. And now all this other stuff, the apples and so on, well, that's just the technicalities of the whole thing. How they're going to start using it on you, and how they're going to start enforcing all this on you. But the people who've taken the shots, they truly have the surveillance already under their skin. They just don't know it yet. And all these other things they keep talking about in that regard have already been done. So, wow, guys, it's all here. It is all here. You've got people calling good evil and evil good, and they're using all this child sex abuse and child sex trafficking that's been in the news lately. They're using that to implement their mandatory digital ID. In order to be in their system, their new system that's coming up here next year, you're also going to have to be caught up in all of your shots. And remember, they've already done this in Vietnam and Thailand, and they're implementing it in Australia and the UK hardcore right now. They're just doing it a little quieter, and they're doing it state by state. Every state is doing this, even though they said they would not. Isn't that something? Doing the opposite of what they said they would do. That's what politicians do, guys, and that's what they've done since time immemorial. And that'll be it for this episode. Don't forget, don'tspeaknews.com is home base for all that we do. I put all kinds of stories here that we can't speak about anywhere else, including this one and many others just like it. And so I put this story up yesterday from Paul Craig Roberts about AI being a threat to all of humanity. And I think we're seeing that taking place right now in the story that I presented to you today, as AI will be running all of these digital ID systems. So don'tspeaknews.com is where I put all kinds of stuff like that. And if you'd like to navigate the site, the tabs here on the top are the way to do it. If you want to subscribe to the channel so that you're notified every time I put up a new post, click on this tab here, and there's a box where you can type in your email. Click on subscribe, and then you'll be notified. And if you want to contact me, Don't Speak News at ProtonMail is the way to do that. Channel support, I want to thank everyone, especially over the last month, back in October, who supported, and of course this month too, because we still need your support each and every month, because without you guys, we literally would not be here. So thank you so much for your support and your prayers, which are always, always needed as well. So thank you very much for that. All the links to support us are right here underneath that tab. And then Rumble, BitChute, Telegram, YouTube, all the different places to find us are right here. And that will be it for now. God bless, take care. Johnny Storm, Don't Speak News.